And welcome to episode one of the Why Behind the Why podcast. I am Tyrell James,
And I am Dr. Nicole Thomas.
and I think I think I'm gonna become a doctor too, just so that I can say I am Dr. Tyrell James, and
I
then you
think
can
you
say
should
I'm Dr. Nicole Thomas. I think that would have a good ring to it.
do it, and go to the new practice. It will change your life. It will change your whole life. It's like no other doctoral program that you will ever um, experience. So make sure you go to the new practice.
So I can't just like go to 7-Eleven and pick something up. I don't want to go to school. I don't want to go to school.
Well, this is a different type of school because a lot of the work that's going to be done, you're going to learn so much about yourself. You're gonna learn so much about yourself. You're gonna heal places that you didn't even think needed to be healed. It's an experience that you will never forget and you will get nowhere else.
Let me tell you something. There have been many nights, many late nights that I have learned a lot about myself going into a 7-Eleven.
Only you. Oh, tell me one. I just need to know one. Tell me one. What have you learned about, the experience, the 7-Eleven experience? That's what we're gonna call it. 7-Eleven experience.
Oh boy. You know what's so funny? I have three stories that come to my head immediately. And I don't feel like they're appropriate for this type of podcast. So,
Probably not.
so we'll skip it. Um okay, so the reason that we're here today, the Why Behind the Why podcast. So my co-host, Dr. Nicole Thomas, she is the one that came up with the title of this podcast. I remember when I brought the idea to you, when we were just kind of bouncing ideas off of each other, trying to figure out where we wanted to go. I knew I wanted to do something with metaphysics because you are a doctor of metaphysics, but didn't know exactly the route to go in. And then I knew, okay, you are a doctor of metaphysics. You have the information as it pertains to metaphysics. I don't have any of that stuff, but what I did have was a lot of questions. And you were able to make it very clear to me that my role in this podcast would be for me to ask the questions to get us to the answers that you can provide for us. So I said, this is the first time where I have been involved in the creation process, the creating process of a podcast, and had no idea where to go. I knew where to start, had no idea where to go. But you coming along and you just adding that, adding that last piece of the puzzle for me, it just everything came together and it's been perfect. The ideas that we bounced off of each other, it's been great. So I want to go ahead and get started. But before we get started, just let everybody know, for the people who don't know exactly what metaphysics is, please just let them know what it is so they can have a better understanding of where we're going to be going with this podcast.
A very simple explanation is that metaphysics is the study of energy and matter, and we are energy and matter. It's scientifically proven, it's not my opinion, that we are definitely energy and we are definitely matter. So we're going to talk a lot about self and the evolution of self, and as it pertains to metaphysics. So that's just a simple explanation.
Okay, so we're basically going to be just giving a metaphysical explanation for any and everything, whatever we decide we want to talk about. So on that note, today we are talking about addiction. I want to have a metaphysical explanation for addiction. So, of course, there's a scientific explanation. Um, there are a couple different reasons. And as you kind of dig and dig and dig, you start to uncover a lot. So I want to try to just give the shortened version of exactly, well, a couple of the causes of addiction. So I know when we do things that feel good, let's say eating, exercising, sex, any of these things that actually feel good to us, the brain rewards us through the neurotransmitter dopamine.
Right.
And that dopamine, that's seen as the pleasure chemical. So Um, when we get rewarded like that, oftentimes it encourages us to keep doing the same thing. You know, for instance, like when I wake up in the middle of the night, and even though I'm a personal trainer and a nutritionist, and I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I go and I get some Oreos, and I'm like, I'm just going to get one, and that dopamine says get two, get three. You know, so addiction works in the same way, in the same manner, but there are deeper reasons for addiction. So it could be genetic. You know, for instance, I have addiction very, very heavy on both sides of my family. I remember learning that it was a genetic thing as a little boy because my mother was terrified. She didn't want me to have that addictive gene, which I turned out to have the addictive gene, but I don't have full blown addiction. With full blown addiction, it's you're powerless over that addiction.
Right.
I have power, I have control, I'm able to reel things back in. Um, so it's it's different. It's different for me, and then it comes in different forms. Never been like addicted to drugs or anything like that, but there are other things that that you can become addicted to. You can become addicted to anything. So there is the genetic side, but then there's also something called epigenetics, and with
Right.
epigenetics, that is when your environment, certain things around you, has a direct effect on your gene expression. And so, for instance, there could be some sort of trauma, some sort of emotional or even psychological trauma, something that could have happened in the home, something outside of the home. Um, it just causes you to, I guess, our fight or flight instincts sometimes kick in. We start looking for a way out. We start looking for a way to stop feeling what we're feeling. There's so many people who suffer from addiction because not necessarily because they were looking to feel good, they just wanted to stop from feeling bad.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
with that being said, so what is the metaphysical explanation for addiction?
You just said a mouthful, and I want to dig in so much of it. So we're going to break down a little bit of what you said piece by piece because you just really, really said a mouthful, and I really want to tie the spiritual side of it into everything you said because I love science in a way that they've discovered quantum physics that science and spirituality can really, really be merged, and there's an explanation for it all. And they call it quantum physics, and it's beautiful because it takes the mystery out of it. It takes all the mystical stuff out of it. So it's pretty beautiful. So we're gonna tackle what you just said, one by one. But getting back to your question, the metaphysics cause of addiction. So according to Louise Hay, she has a book called You Can Heal Your Life. And in that book, she breaks down all the spiritual causes of a lot of different ailments. Great book. But according to Louise Hayes, addiction, the metaphysical cause for addiction is running from the self, fear, not knowing how to love yourself. And the wonderful thing about when you look up spiritual causes to ailments that I've never seen it not right on point. I have never seen it not right on point. If you're true to yourself and if you can tell yourself the truth, it's always right on the money. It's right on the money. So digging in that, you just said a mouthful because a lot of times from what I have experienced is that a lot of times when people have an addiction to like drugs or alcohol or unhealthy, so we can have addictions in a lot of different ways. So some addictions are healthy and some addictions are not so healthy. But when it's unhealthy addiction, like for example, drugs or um, alcohol or things that can really hurt us. I have found that these usually are the cases, running from self, fear, um, not knowing how to love yourself, because a lot of times we're taught to do what we're told to do and not what we are led inner led to do.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times we'll go through life and we're unhappy. And a lot of times we're unhappy because we're simply not being true to ourselves because we were taught to do what we were told versus what we really, really inner feel, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of people walking around and hurt. So a lot of times if you don't feel good, you want to do something that's going to make you feel good, right?
Right.
A lot of times if you're not happy, you want to do something that's going to bring happiness. And a lot of times this is where that comes in. And it's very surface. It's not it's very surface, it's very temporary. So you might be enjoying yourself through the process, but the after effects are not so good and not so fun. So is it really, really making you happy? Is it really, really joy? Is it really, really um, what you're trying to use it for?
Mm-hmm.
So um, I think mostly, almost all the time, when we get down to the core reasons of why people um, become addicted to a substance, it is always usually because they are not in some way being true to themselves in some way, shape, or form.
So you said I actually want to go back. I want to. You just hit me with a mouthful. Now I want to talk about everything. I'm sitting there trying to take notes. I'm mad I don't have a pen. Next time in every show afterwards, I'm gonna have a pen just so I can hurry up and write things down. I feel like I can write faster than I can type on my phone. But anyway, um, you said man, now I shouldn't have said everything that I just said. Now I forgot what I was about to say. Um, I got to talk my way back into it. You said something about not knowing how to love yourself.
Hmm.
So, do you think that a person who is suffering from addiction does not love themselves, or they're just having a hard time of identifying how to love themselves, or they're having a hard time identifying the love that they have for themselves?
I think all can be. I mean, in every situation, it's going to be different. And that's getting to the core of that particular person. But I think it can be all of that because a lot of times, if you're not able to be true to yourself, if you're not able to, if there's a fear to not be able to listen to what you want to do, how you really feel about something, and you've been giving giving instructions your whole life of how you're supposed to be versus who you really are, then are you really loving yourself? Because you don't know yourself if that's the case.
Hmm.
So if you've ignored who you are at the core of your being your whole life, and you've taken on somebody else's instructions to be, this is how you act, this is what you do, this is what, this is how you're supposed to behave, this is, you've taken on everybody else's opinions about how it's supposed to be done,
Hmm.
which means I have then turned off my guidance system and I'm walking to the beat of somebody else's drum. Then how can you love yourself
Hmm.
if
So
you
how
don't
does that
know
person?
that person?
So how does that person get to a point of loving themselves without outside influence, without the things that they have become addicted to?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. Um, Stripping away all the opinions about what somebody told you you should do and who they told you you should be and who they told you, what they told you to act like, and really spend some time getting to know who you are and what that looks like. What do I like? How do I feel? Um, What brings me joy? What do I enjoy doing? What makes my heart sing? How do I even like to look? I mean, a lot of times we're given opinions on even how to wear your hair, what's appropriate, what's age appropriate, what's not age appropriate. You should be this way because you look like this, and you should act this way because you look like this. We're given all of this stuff. And if you take that on, then you cut off your own guidance system of who you truly are. So being able to just sit and every step of the way, what is it that I want? What is it that I like to do? And then being true to yourself. And sometimes that means disappointing those really, really important people in your life. I have a daughter, and she has taught me so much. Oh, she has made me a better woman. When I was raised very, very, very rigid Christianity, very rigid. So, you were supposed to act a certain way, you were supposed to do a certain thing, boys supposed to be boys, girls supposed to be girls, and I have this daughter, and about 12, she started showing um that she identified, and she was more attracted to girls than she was to boys. Now at this time, I'm still in that rigid Christianity. You can't do that. With all of that dogma, you're gonna go to hell and all that. And it was a very, very difficult time. And through that time, I had really, really had to seek God's God. I really had to seek God, really. And God really had to reteach me who God was, not who they told me God was, but who God really was.
Mhm.
But through that time, she decided that she was going to be her no matter what I said, no matter what I did, no matter what anybody else said to her, she was going to be her. But there are so many people that can't do that, that don't want to disappoint those people that they love. But through it, she has taught me so much. She's even taught me how to go in. That was one of the things that made me go in and say, well, who am I? And what did they give me versus who I am? And really start me asking those real questions to myself. Because I'm looking at this strong young lady, and we went through a lot. We went through a lot.
Mhm.
But I'm looking at this strong young lady that will not compromise on who she is. And it was now, and once I got it, it was the most beautiful thing ever. But it was very, very hard going through it. So I would say to really, really explore. There's some people that you might disappoint. There might be some people that don't agree with who you choose to be. Um, but examine who you are, examine what you like, examine what makes you happy. I mean, to the core of your being, not the surface, not the temporary. Say no when you need to say no. Have boundaries. If you don't want to participate, don't participate. A lot of times we use substance because we're unhappy about something. A lot of people are in relationships that they're unhappy with. A lot of people are doing jobs that they're unhappy with. And it's up to every individual to find your own peace and your own happiness and your own joy. Nobody else can tell you what that looks like. It's up for every individual to figure that out for themselves and walk to the beat of their own drum. Because when you do that, you will feel the joy that comes from inside instead of having to give yourself something from the outside to make you feel a way.
Okay, so you just said something that makes me, I never thought about something. Now, before I even get into it, I want to preface it by first saying I am not trying to remove accountability from the person who may use a substance. However, based off of what you were saying, like the way things were with your daughter when she first started showing at 12 years old that she was opposite, that she was interested in the same gender, and the way that you reacted to it. Do we now have to be very careful and responsible with how we deal with the people in our lives, because it could cause them to feel a certain way, which could then in turn lead them to wanting to escape that feeling and use some sort of substance to escape what the feeling that we placed on them, especially somebody who was like in a parental figure, in a parental figure into this person's life, because you have so much influence and you have so much say. And so many of us as children, we're afraid of letting our parents down. But if this is who you believe that you are, this is what you truly feel inside of you, it's hard for a person to come out to their parents and say, this is who I am, because they're fearful of disappointing that parent. So now, do we really just need to start being more mindful of how we deal with the people in our lives, because we never know what they're dealing with and how they may deal with what they're dealing with?
Absolutely. Hence, where my addiction came in. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Because that's when I discovered my addiction, and that addiction was control. So addiction can be in a lot of different ways. There's addiction to, my addiction was control. I wanted to control everything. I wanted to control my environment. I wanted to control the people that was around me. I wanted to control everything. So, that was when I really realized that I had an issue. I had an issue because truly you can only control you. You
Right.
can't control anybody else around you. And trying to control everything around you other than yourself will cause you to feel unbalanced or of unhappy, or make you feel out of balance, because it was never meant for us to try to control anybody else. You have the only control I have is of myself.
So what were you reacting to when your addiction came in the form of trying to control everything around you? What happened to you that caused you to get to that point?
Oh, that's a great question. I love, you always ask the perfect question. You always ask the right questions. Um, wow. Okay. So that started very, very early on. And I really, really think it was a learned behavior, because I came from such a dictatorship household, where this is what you do in family. I'm going to say family, where, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to act this way, you're supposed to be this. I was given what to do versus ask the questions about what I wanted to do. And a lot of times, and that's a different way of being, that's a different way of parenting, that's a different way of life, to allow a person to ask the questions versus give them instructions or give them the answer.
Hmm.
So I think because I was raised in such a dictatorship environment, I was out of control of anything and everything. I was out of control of my life. I didn't have control over my life. So I think the natural response was for me to then, when I was able to control everything, or at least attempt to, because you learn in this process that you actually have absolutely no control
Right.
over anything other than yourself. I
Hmm.
had no control over her. When she made the decision to be who she chose to be, I had no control over that. But she taught me so much in so many different ways, because that changed how I then started raising my other children, because I realized, I mean, you can do whatever to them. I'm sure, you have parents, and I'm sure a lot of parents would agree with this. You can, discipline them. You can talk to them. You can, keep them in the house. You can try to put them in a bubble all you want.
Mm-hmm.
It may stagnate what they're going to do, but it doesn't change it. It may, it may show up later. It might slow down the progress, but they came here for an experience, and they're gonna have the experience, whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So she taught me that I had absolutely no control, and I really, really was here to just assist them and guide them the best way that I could. But I had no control over what they were going to choose to do with their lives and who they chose to be,
Okay.
which freed me, which really actually it freed you in a lot of ways, because then you can really sit back and watch them become them,
Mm-hmm.
and actually get to know them, and ask them really the right questions to help get them to them and support them in the way that they need to be supported. But
Mm-hmm.
you made a very, very good point. I mean, she went through a whole lot, and we had to go through a whole lot of healing. There's many times I've said to her, I'm so sorry, I just didn't know any better. We had to sit down with actually my mentor, which is Dr. New, which is the best when it comes to healing. We sat down with her and we had it out. And I really, really, expressed to her that I was, so sorry, because there was no excuse. And it was because I just didn't know any better. I could only do what I was taught to do. And I
Right.
had to learn how to do something different. And that came straight from, the desire to want to be better, and the desire to want to do something different, and the desire to know the right thing.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about now chasing highs.
Come on, let's do
So the person who is addicted to chasing highs,
it. Mhm.
um, it's normally I feel something and it feels amazing. And now I want to go out here and feel it again. But the second time I do the same thing, it didn't feel the same. So now I have to move on to something else. I have to chase another high. And essentially, what they're doing is they are addicted to that temporary high. Is that a person who also who is struggling with self love? Or is it that they just love the high?
Well, so let's go back to the spiritual cause of addiction. So there's, she names three: running from self, um, fear, and not knowing how to love self, right?
Hmm.
So if you're chasing a high, that means I'm chasing something that it will imply that I'm chasing something that I don't already have. That means I'm trying to go get something that I don't already have. Well, happiness starts within, exhilaration starts within, joy starts within. It all begins within us,
Hmm.
because everything else is subject to an action or a thing, a person, place, or thing. It's subject to something else giving us something, which means we're out of control. We're pieces of God. We're literally pieces of God. That means we have access to it all. We have access, and we are all of it. We are joy. We are the love we seek. We are the joy we seek. We are the fun we seek. We are it. So chasing after something is looking for it outside of us versus inside of us. So a lot of times it's because we can't go in, we haven't learned how to go in and get it, and we don't know that we are it. Because when you know you it, then you can go in and find it. You can go in and get it. Versus chasing something outside of us, and we're subject to that thing. Um, I'll share. So here's his control thing, right? So being young, growing up, all my friends would smoke. They would smoke weed or whatever, and that was one thing that I just didn't do. And I would have friends, and I would be around my friends or whatever. They'd be like, "Oh, we're gonna get you one day. We're gonna get you." But I was somewhat of a control freak. I had to be in control of my environment. So I was only going to, do a certain thing, even if I was going to engage in drinking, it was going to be to a certain point because I needed to be in control, of my environment, which wasn't a bad thing, but um, so I've never smoked. So I remember at one point I said, well, I just want to try. I just want to experience, edibles and that kind of thing. So tried an edible and OMG. Ooh. You talk about being high, Jesus. Um, I remember saying that I never really want to do that again
Hmm.
because what I realized that I was happy. I could have a good time without it, So I
Hmm.
didn't want anything to take me away from me because I'm good. Like I
Hmm.
enjoy this thing called life. I figured out how, I found my happiness. I found my peace. I found my joy. I didn't need an outside substance to
Hmm.
give me a feeling. And that was such a powerful thing for me because I realized I didn't need anything on the outside of me to make me feel a certain way.
Hmm.
So I think it's really because we a lot of times we haven't learned how to go in and find our joy and find our peace and because we are the thing that we seek. We really are the thing that we seek.
It's funny. I kind of, as you were explaining that and talking about going inside, before you got to that part, I was thinking to myself, oh, I got a question for, I'm gonna get her. I'm gonna get her with this whole chasing highs thing. And then you hit the nail right on the head. I was like, I can't get her now. What I was going to say was the person who is chasing highs, let's say a person who has a need for speed. So they get on a roller coaster and they're like, that was exhilarating. But now I need a faster roller coaster. And they're constantly searching for a different roller coaster. And what I was going to say is, well, how is that a struggle with self love? That's just a person who loves to go fast, somebody who loves to experience these ups and downs and these twists and these turns, because all of that stuff is exhilarating. But then you came with everything is inside of you. You're chasing something on the outside, but it's all inside right there. So you can get that same type of joy, that same type of exhilaration, that excitement if you just go inside. But now my question is, how does that person go inside and find that feeling?
It's truly by asking yourself and experiencing life and asking yourself really what is it that you enjoy and what you like and finding those things that give you the real joy and the real peace. Going within and finding and discovering that you are a piece of God and everything that God is, you are. So and that you have a direct connection to that because spirit is within us. Spirit is all things. We are a piece of it. We are it. So we have access to it all. We have access to it all. And the mind is such a powerful thing. The mind is such a powerful thing. So some of the things, sometimes what I'll do with the client is I'll have them close their eyes and I'll say, think of something, a time in your life or an event that you was just so happy, that you was just full of joy and just it brought you so much joy. And you can literally go back and when you think about it, you'll have the same emotion that you had that time at that time. And they've done, I mean, quantum physics, they've done study after study after study on this, where there's no difference. You can have a marathon runner um, in their mind sit and run the race in their mind. And in their mind, there's no difference from them actually running the race and them thinking about the race. There's absolutely no difference. So the mind is a very, very powerful thing. So you can sit down and just think of a thought that brings you joy and it takes you right to that. You can sit down and think of something that is sad and sorrow, and it'll take you right there.
Mm-hmm.
So we have full control over our emotions. We are in control of our emotions. Our emotions are not in control of us
Mm-hmm.
unless you allow it. Unless you allow it. And that's not to say that you can't enjoy life and that you can't go to that roller coaster because you enjoy it. It just means I can enjoy it without it controlling my emotions. It is not the thing that I'm chasing, it's the thing that I'm enjoying at this moment. So there's a difference between chasing it and enjoying it. There's such a difference. So
Yes.
I
Okay.
might enjoy a roller coaster, but I don't need it in order to feel that exhilaration.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, you
And we're
know,
talking about addiction. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What were you about to say?
no, I was just saying, so there's a difference between what I need and I
Mm-hmm.
have to have from the
Okay.
outside of me versus I'm just enjoying this.
Right. Okay. So, and the thing is, we are talking about addiction. So, we also have to look at the things that come along with addiction. So, if I try to simplify it and take it off of something emotional or even spiritual by bringing up the need for speed, but we now have to incorporate the word addiction and look at everything that comes along with that. So, when we're looking at a person who has a need for speed and they are addicted to that, so what happens when the amusement parks are closed? How are you going to get your speed? Are you going to get in the car and do it? Now you have created a death machine. You
There you
know,
go.
you could possibly kill somebody else or yourself, or just, or seriously injure, someone or yourself. Um, Even if the amusement parks are open, but you're addicted to that high, how much money are you spending on going to this amusement park to ride these? Which are you doing with your time? Should your time be going to something else? But now, instead of your time going to somewhere else, now you are constantly riding these I was about to say motorcycles, but motorcycles too, because we're still talking about chasing that speed, chasing that high. But but for that need for speed. So um I guess as you I had that thought come into my head just now, as because I was in my head, I was trying to get you. I was trying to kind of stump you with the whole need for speed thing, because I was trying to take it off of something that could be emotional, psychological, or even spiritual. But it very much is. It very much is. And that is actually the purpose for this podcast, because we are giving a metaphysical explanation
Right.
for everything, no matter what it is. Um, so that makes perfect sense. There was something else that you said that I wanted to um I can't remember. Next time I'm gonna have my pen and my paper, because it's hard to sit here and type this stuff into my phone. But so now I do want to talk about the person who understands the ramifications. They understand the crash
Mm-hmm.
that comes with addiction, and they do it anyway. The definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over. Well, actually, maybe it's not even the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, because maybe you do know you're going to get the same result. But the person who, their mentality is, well, this temporary high for whatever the addiction is, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, whatever it is, this temporary high is going to take me away from what I'm feeling. Even though it's temporary, I'm willing to deal with the temporary high, and I'm also willing to deal with the crash that comes afterwards, or the consequences that come after um, the action. So that person, how does that person get to a place of self-love? Because that's a really, really dark place to be, when
Right.
you know the consequences and you still decide to make those choices. That's a really, really dark place to be. And it's um I believe that it's a couple steps away from suicide. At that point, you're at a really, really dark and uncomfortable place, and you're searching for answers, you're searching for light, and when you try to look inside, because what you're saying is, of course, people need to look within themselves. They have to be honest about themselves. But what about that person that when they look at themselves, all they see is darkness, all they see is misery, and whatever it is, they could be dealing with depression, anxiety, trauma, emotional trauma, all of these different things that this person could be dealing with. How do they weed past all of that to find their light?
Number one, just to be responsible, I want to say if that is the case, then they definitely need to seek help. And there is no shame in that. My teacher, my master teacher, says, she would always say, even coaches need to be coached.
Hmm.
So there's, I have my people that I go to when I need to talk. And I think we all should have a safe place, whether, and in that instance, a therapist, a counselor, when it comes to, if it's if it gets even a touch where you don't want to be here anymore and it's suicidal, then please seek help. Seek help immediately. So I definitely want to be responsible and put that out there.
Hmm.
Um, but there are people that's in that space and it's not a suicidal place. It's just a very, very dark place. And I still would say get help,
Right.
whether it be from a therapist or um, someone to help you work through it. Um, uh, get help, get help, get help, especially when you're not able to do it yourself. But I think that's why this title of this podcast is so important. It's the why we do what we do. It's the why behind the why. And I think it's important to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I trying to um, get away from my thoughts? What thoughts am I trying to get away from?
Hmm.
And really sit and a lot of times we need help doing that. A lot of times we need coaches, life coaches, and therapists, depending on what the situation is. Sometimes we just need somebody to ask us the right questions so that we can get to our answers. Um, and just on another note, it I think a lot of times we've been taught to not that emotions are bad things. You know what I mean? That we've been taught to ignore our emotions, but they're actually our guidance system. They're really, really a good thing because if you're doing something and it doesn't feel good to do it, it doesn't feel good to participate, it doesn't it doesn't bring you joy, then a lot of times we've been taught you just got to do what you got to do. But I have a different philosophy, and I say, take off the time and see how it feels because that's your guidance system telling you, okay, if you're participating in something that you truly don't want to participate in, and that it doesn't feel good and it doesn't bring you joy, don't participate.
All right.
And that's hard, especially when we start talking about relationships and we start talking about jobs. And I'm not telling anybody to go quit their job, but what I'm saying is, if you're participating in something that is just not bringing you joy, it's actually doing the complete opposite. Then it's time to explore what it is that you like. So let's use a job for example, because if you got to work, you got to pay the bills. I get it. I'm not telling you go quit the job. What I'm saying is take that time to figure out what you would enjoy doing, that could bring that same type of financial um, income in that you would enjoy doing, and start working your way towards that.
Hmm.
Figure out what would bring you joy to do in every aspect of your life. If you're participating in a relationship and you're miserable in a relationship, I mean, this world is like a smorgasbord. You can go pick any experience you want to have. You
Right.
don't have to stick with the one that you're unhappy with. And a lot of times we'll put ourselves in our own jail.
Hmm.
But you're putting yourself in that jail. That's nobody else's doing. You can take yourself out, and you can take yourself out with no guilt
Right.
and no shame. Self-preservation, first rule. Self-preservation, first rule. And it's up to you. It's your responsibility to make you happy. It is your responsibility to make you happy. And whatever you're participating in and whoever you're participating in it with, it's their responsibility to make themselves happy.
Right. Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
I would definitely say ask yourself those questions. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I feel the need to chase the high? What am I running away from? What is it that I don't want to feel? What am I participating in that I don't want to participate in? That's a loaded question.
Hmm.
I never forget when my master teacher asked me that question. What are you participating in that you don't want to participate in? And a lot of times, if you can be true to yourself, you'll discover your answer. And I would say, don't for 1 minute be ashamed, or um, don't be ashamed to be able to explore that and then decide that you want something different.
Hmm.
Every day is a gift. For me, I believe every day is a gift. Every day is a gift. Every minute is a gift. Every hour is a gift, because it's another opportunity to choose you, to literally choose yourself.
Hmm.
And the only way you do that is to discover what you like, what you want, how you feel, who you are. So
Hmm.
ask yourself the hard questions.
I want to go back to something that you said. You said the, I believe you said, was it your mentor or somebody said to close your eyes and think of a happy memory?
I usually do that. I'll do that with some of my clients.
Okay, that's right. You said you do that, but okay.
So to show them how powerful they are, we're very, very powerful beings. We're kids of God. So
Mhm.
you can you really, really can control every emotion. You can evoke an emotion within yourself. So
Mhm.
even if you're having a emotion that doesn't feel so good, we have the power to invoke a different one.
Now, as powerful and as positive as that is,
Hmm.
and that has an incredible and a positive effect on the way we do things. We have to be very cognizant of the thoughts that we put into our heads, because you know the body follows. There can
Absolutely.
be both a physical and an emotional and a psychological effect on the things that we put into our brains. So when we're talking about memories and
Hmm.
we're putting memories into our brains, especially happy memories,
Hmm.
could this also be the reason that some people remain in bad relationships? When the person continuously shows you who they are, but prior to them showing you the real them, they showed you their representative. They
Hmm.
showed you what they needed to show you to get you to feel what they wanted you to feel for them.
Okay.
Then, after they got you, they turned into who they truly are.
Hmm.
So, is it possible that sometimes people remain in bad relationships because they're closing their eyes and remembering who that person was in the beginning?
Absolutely. But hence the issue. Okay. So I'm responsible for me. And it's my responsibility every day to choose me
Mhm.
in spite of anything or anybody else. So when I'm choosing me, I'm going to be the best that I can be to everybody around me. So being true to myself, if I'm choosing me, that means every day I have a choice to make. And that means every day I'm considering me.
Mhm.
I'm going to be in consideration of myself every day, every choice, every decision, and every opportunity. That's every opportunity. Everything that comes is an opportunity for me to choose me. So if I'm participating in something, if it was good at first, it was great. It was beautiful. It was what I wanted, what I thought I wanted. And I chose it for that moment. The beautiful piece is I get to not choose it.
Hmm.
If it starts not feeling good, if it starts causing me harm, if it starts bringing me, or if it's something that is not for me anymore,
Hmm.
and it's my responsibility to do that. So yes, I can concentrate and focus on when it was good, but am I being true to what's today? What is it today? What is
Hmm.
it today? That's almost like when, if you was a kid and you liked something as a kid, if there was a certain piece of cake or you liked it as a kid, well, you grew up and you didn't like it anymore. Do you still choose it? Do you keep eating it even though you don't like it anymore?
Hmm.
You know?
Hmm.
So you have the opportunity to say, I don't want this anymore. This is not enjoyable to me. This is not what I want to participate anymore. This is not equal to my energy. This is not a, this is not this is not so nothing can make you happy because that comes from within, but it is disturbing my happiness and it's disturbing my peace, and only I can do something about that. I can choose to continue to be a part of it, or I can choose to no longer be a part of it,
Hmm.
and that's
And
part of self-preservation.
right, right. So it's putting the accountability back on the person.
Always us.
Right. It's and when you're in that, and honestly, I brought that up because again, I know we're talking about addiction, but I'm talking about a person, just to be clear. Yeah, I'm talking about a person who is addicted to the past, who is addicted to holding on to the past, and sometimes trying to restructure the present. If the present isn't so favorable, they maybe not necessarily restructure it, but have an explanation for why things are the way they are, but they have to go to the past to do that. And instead of dealing with what's presently going on, with what a person is constantly and presently showing you, they have to keep going back to the past. So I guess that's where I was going with that. When I brought up that whole scenario, a person was constantly looking to the past. Well, I did this. People who are very traditional. There are a lot of people who do things just because it was taught to them, just because that's what they grew up doing. That's what they grew up hearing. So they just mimic these things instead of looking inside and figuring out, as you've said a couple of times, what is it that I want? What is it that's going to make me feel good? Instead of just, living the way your parents told you to live, or, because, and it doesn't necessarily mean that your parents were wrong, but it may not be right for you.
Absolutely. And I
So,
have a lot of experience in that. that relationship where where I made it, um I was refusing to see the truth because I didn't want to see it, that fairy tale, that fantasy versus the reality of what's really going on.
mhm,
And regardless of you do that or not, your body still is in response to the truth of what you're really, really feeling.
right.
So whether you acknowledge the truth or not, it's going to come. That's a whole nother podcast. We can definitely explore that because we can talk about that. I have a whole bunch of experience with that one.
Okay. Well, look, I think we have pretty much covered everything. I think we've done a phenomenal job with episode one of the Why Behind the Why podcast.
Yay!
I'm definitely looking forward to this. So we will be premiering either it'll be Mondays at 7 p.m. and you'll be able to check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Um, and I'm looking forward to see where this thing can go. I'm
Yes, and
excited.
if you do need help working through some things, you can reach me on Facebook, Instagram, On Facebook, Doc Nicole Thomas. On Instagram, Dr. Divine. So if you need the help, reach out. Reach out. Even again, even coaches need coach. So we all sometimes need a little help walking through this thing called life and getting to our happiness and our joy and our best selves. Get the help you need, whether it's me or someone else. And I'm connected with a network of coaches through the new practice. If I'm not the person for you, we will find someone for you. So always reach out and get the help.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. All right. Well, Nicole, thank you.
Thank you. Great.
Yes, yes, it definitely has been great. So we're going to we'll be looking forward to doing this on a weekly or bi-weekly. We'll figure this thing out. We'll see how we're going to do this, but um we'll figure it out. But we aren't going anywhere, everybody. So you'll always be able to catch us. Um this is one of those podcasts where I feel like you're probably not going to pick up on everything the first time you hear it. You may need to go back, listen again. You may hear things differently, pick up on things differently, see things differently. So that's just the way these types of conversations work. you know. So, but I just want to also thank everybody for joining us, and we hope that you continue on this journey with us. And don't forget, so check this out. All right. I like to end all of my shows with something, some sort of tagline, something I like to end with, right? So I'm about to try something here, okay?
Okay, let's go.
All right. So, all right, for everybody out there, don't afraid that never mind. I messed up. I'll do it next week. Whatever. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for joining us. We'll see you next week.